Hello and welcome to the Survivor's Corner. I'm Kirk, and joining me today to fill in for Jetwire, let me welcome Archimedes. Ark, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Hopefully I got all my mic settings correct here.
So yeah, everybody let us know if we got any issues, if you can't hear or anything. I think we've got everything ironed out. And Ark, again, thank you for taking the time to help me out with Jetwire being gone. It's always a
sure.
pleasure to talk.
No problem at all. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
We've got Fire Angel, Wandering Firekeeper, yep.
I'll be the one. Esty Nyland, Old Man Spiker. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming in and joining us on the live podcast. We always have stragglers. Everybody gets the notice so late. So one thing
So
I do
Kirk,
want to go ahead, Ark. I'm sorry.
you gave me the option of what to talk about for this one, and I decided to talk about. It's a few different things. It's the idea of how you build a custom challenge, as well as how you get the challenge right. So you can change it quite a bit if you're more of a pilgrim player, or if you want to play more of a stalker mode. So things in that realm essentially is what I thought we would talk over today.
And I think it's going to be an interesting subject because for anybody that's been kind of watching what we've been doing, I know Pickle had started that hand luggage thing, and I had kind of taken up that mantle. You've kind of taken your own twist on that. So when you suggested the subject, I was like, this is a really good one because there's variations of the same theme, but they all add different levels of complexity and difficulties by either choosing custom settings or adding restrictions or certain rules.
Yeah, I get a lot of people asking me, how do you come up with all these challenge ideas? Where do the ideas come from? And a lot of it is just like stuff that's built into the Long Dark itself, like the way they track your stats. You can find things in there and say, oh, well, what if I do something that just tracks that? Or there was the recent tournament where people were trying to find all the painkillers. Atreyu, I think, was the one who came up with that, and he's like, hey, let's take this useless item and let's make it the most important thing in the game. I don't know if you've seen any of that one.
I have been catching a few people doing the pill popping. Was it pill popping pilgrim? I can't say it. That's a tongue twister. And that reminds me too. Well, and I've seen DH Dunn do something similar in that same aspect, and it kind of falls into the same thing where he's taken what would be essentially fairly useless items and repurposed them. I know, like when he was doing one where he was like fixing the train yards and he was using pieces and stuff like that. So it's neat to be able to fold in something that doesn't get used very often and make it important. Like whatever it may be.
Oh yeah, he has a lot of great stuff with his Can I Lope 10 days. I think one of the ones I really like the idea of was it's sort of an outer loper. I think it was the Burglar series, where he said, well, you need 2 rocks to kind of get into each house.
That one was particularly good.
And you can only go there once. So it's sort of like an outer loper light, because you can go inside each place once, but eventually you'll start to run out of spots.
And God forbid if you forget anything or you screw up and walk outside and there's a blizzard and it's the only building around. Yeah, there's a lot of gamble to it.
Then you can't get back to your stuff. Yeah, that's that would be bad.
You can see a few, oops, I left my, bedroll behind in there. And that's one of the things I think is very interesting about the game, and I think that's why it's so replayable, is that you can take the base game, change just one aspect of it. Again, kind of like the not being able to go into buildings or sleep in buildings. Changes the whole dynamic of how you play, what you can do, how far you can go.
Yeah, so just as an example of what we're talking about, this was several years ago now. I kept seeing comments on the subreddit. Hi Piccolo, welcome in. I kept seeing comments about whether you could survive forever, and people kept saying, well, you can, but you need the mag lens and you need to get the renewable stuff from the coast. And so I thought about it, and I realized you don't actually need the mag lens, because in the late game you can just keep your fire on all the time, and so you never need to restart, and you can always move it with torches. And so that's where I got the original idea for the one match challenge, although there's several other people who came up with the same thing. I think you can find a few people who played it. I forget their names. Zach has certainly talked about doing the one match challenge. But I was in the process of trying to do that when I looked in the stats and I saw, hey, there's a stat that says longest fire, and that's what gave me the idea to do the whole Frankie series, where I just kept one fire and kept that going all the time.
And that brings about such a calculated, and I know that's the kind of the way you tend to play. You play this a bit like a chess match, because when I watch you doing, in fact, just recently you were doing the Mystery 5 thing that you were doing recently, and you're trying to get it off on the right foot, and then unfortunately, and I don't want to spoil it, but in the last episode he had to make some changes, and I won't say anything more than that.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see. I was like, okay, I need to tweak this a little bit and everything. And then the one I'm confusing, and you had a lot of confusion on this anyway, was you were trying to do the perfect misery thing. That's the one I was thinking of, where you had to keep re-rolling in
Oh
order to
man,
find
that one
that
was
perfect
crazy.
spark.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's so interesting, because the amount of steps you're thinking ahead, and one of the things I love about hand luggage too is it's like, what is the absolute thing that I need to move to the next region? And so yeah, I love all these little strategy things where you have to think about what's your next move. The hand luggage thing is also exciting because it involves chat, because chat can second guess you and go, did you really think you needed to bring that, or you should have brought this?
Yeah, let me just answer this question from Old Man Spiker. So the idea with the one match challenge, there's a few different ways you can play it, but the sort of standard idea would be you get one match and you can never use a fire striker, mag lens, flare, anything like that to start extra fires. And so what you do is you start your fire and you pull torches off of it, and you chain your torches to the next place that you want to fire, and you use your lit torch to start the next fire. So you use one match and you never start any extra fires, you just keep your fire going. And there's a few different ways to do it. The version that I prefer, you actually have to start the fire on day one, but if you want to make it easier, you can wait later and you can just survive on toilet water and warm clothes and stuff like that until you've built up a nice amount of extra fuel, and then you can start your fire and you'll have a little bit easier of a time keeping it. And then the other challenge that I did, this was the Frankie, the 500-day fire, which I still only ever made it to about day 120, but there's no reason to think that I couldn't go to day 500 on it. The idea with that was you just have one that you keep all the time, but then I also allowed myself to use extra matches just if I'm out and about. So that was a variation of it.
And that's the one you started, I believe. Frankie was the one you started in Ash Canyon, and you had to go to Mystery Lake within the 24-hour period, correct?
Oh yeah, that was a crazy start.
Yeah,
Originally, because of the way the timing works, I think I realized that if you spawn at midnight, as long as you start your fire in the first 23 hours, then the days survived should line up with the longest fire duration in the stat, right? Like you'd have one they survived and 24 hours at the same time, and then 2 days survived and 48 at the same time, just because of the way the math works. But it turns out that there's some variation in that I never figured out, but it kind of varies around a lot.
And Old Man
Oh,
Spiker's asking you a follow-up, and he's saying that if the torch blows out and your fire is gone forever, oof. But
yeah,
there's
so that's
more than that.
that's actually an important point about the one match challenge. You can leave a safety fire. So there's various places that are completely windproof. Obviously inside houses if you have like a stove, or fishing huts have locations. You can put them in caves. So there's places where you can leave a safety fire. And so what you do is you leave your safety, you put like an hour or two of fuel on it, and then you walk with your torch to your next location. And so that way, if it does blow out, you can go back to the previous location. Yeah, and that's really important because otherwise it would just be almost impossible. There's another trick you can use. There's no wind during fog. So if the weather has just changed to fog, you have about an hour or two where you're not going to have to worry about the wind.
Now, in your particular one where you're doing the one match thing, if the fire goes out, does that end the run? You're done? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And once again, this is slightly confusing because it's like two different challenges. There's the one match and then there's the one fire forever. But I do intend, I actually want to do the one match challenge at some point because it just gives you more freedom to travel all around. I'm kind of constrained to the Mystery Lake area plus 1 to 2 regions away, and it's really tough to travel that far, so I'm gonna have a lot more flexibility.
And then Faye
Have I done a
is
one
asking you,
Yeah.
have you done a one torch, say, from DP to Sundered Pass, or between two distant points?
So there was a tournament a little while back where people did DP to, I think, Milton, and you had to light certain fires along the way. So certainly people have done that. I have not personally done this. I think the furthest I got, this was years ago now, but I did a test run where I actually tried to do this in Nogoa, and it was just way too hard for me at the time. I was still more of a beginner than I am now back then. But I think I made it from Hush River Valley to like Milton or maybe Forlorn Muskeg, and then died to a wolf or something.
And then Piccolo says she loves how the challenges make you learn things about the game. It definitely can make you look at the game differently. There's so many different ones, like the hand luggage, or I'd even say so much as, and I know I'm going to get beat up for this, but Dead World, where you're not hunting and you're scavenging, things like you were doing with the Perfect Misery. You have to be so calculated and reduce your risk to damage. And it teaches you how to go a little lighter. You can get around the world all the time without having so much stuff on you. Swear jar has been filled.
Yeah, the what is it? I guess it's the Outer Loper Challenge also teaches you where there are places to sleep, because obviously you can't sleep inside, so you have to learn how to sometimes sleep in cars, or make a snow shelter to sleep in. That's something that a lot of people don't think of at first, just because they're kind of rarely used.
It's one of our most popular mini series on here on the podcast. Jitwire and I did a mini podcast about snow shelters, and it's been one of our most popular because it's such a weird subject, about how most people don't ever think about them. And it's like they do come in handy if you don't have a bedroll, and if you're trying to summit and you need a place to sleep, it can make the difference. So,
Yeah.
sometimes they come in handy.
back when I first started YouTube, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, I had played The Long Dark a little bit on Stalker a few years previously, and I had learned Coastal Highway, and I had learned some of DP as well. And so I wanted to learn the maps on Loper, which is pretty tough. And I had some false starts, but I eventually got one going where I spawned in Forlorn Muskeg and managed to get to Mystery Lake. And so I was learning all of those areas pretty much for the first time because I hadn't really seen much outside of that southeast corner of the map. But anyway, at some point I traveled to Milton and I did not have a bedroll. And so I got down there into the climbing area, and I think I even had a wolf attack too, and I was like, well, I'm done. There's nothing I can do here. But it turned out there was a way out of it, and I actually managed to think of it in time, which was to build a snow shelter to sleep in so that I would be able to climb out.
And that's you know, and one other thing too, and this would probably fall into what we're talking about here is when you're playing like you see a lot of people doing like outer loper, but you can play outer pilgrim too. You can make that change for yourself. So if you're someone playing on pilgrim, Voyager, Stalker, don't allow yourself to go inside or limit it similar to what we were talking about earlier with DH Dunn's burglar challenge. You get to go into each place once and you have to make great use of it. And once, one and done and you're out. So there's ways to even take, challenges like, Outer Loper and tune them down to the game style that you like and give yourself a little bit of a struggle, and it teaches you like what Archimedes is saying, where are the beds at outside? Where's a good place to sleep where I'm not going to freeze to death?
Yeah, and this is a great point with respect to what we're talking about, which is really trying to tune the challenge to what you want. The most fun I've had in this whole game ever was when I did a few series that were one region blind exploration challenges. So I learned Hush River Valley this way, I learned Ash Canyon, I learned Timberwolf, and I did a Black Rock series, but I tried to do that one in Interloper, and it was just way too hard for me. So actually the most fun that I had was when I turned it down and I did Stalker, and I learned those 3 regions, HRV, AC, Timberwolf Mountain. Those are, I think, some of my best series that I have, and I just had so much fun trying to learn those regions.
Yeah, the single region challenges are really good for one, map knowledge, and two, is being resourceful. Like, your resources are limited, and so you have to be, a little bit of, you got to think through problems, and you got to, have a response to, how do I get out of this problem? How do I avoid this wolf because I haven't found any way to start a fire? So on and so forth. So those are the things that I know that I have learned from watching others and just from my own play, that you don't always have to have a fire in front of you to stop a wolf. You can learn to path him out, get around him, make him follow you. There's lots of ways to avoid those problems. So doing these harder challenges like this where you limit the ability, you can't run into the building to save yourself from the wolf. You got to figure out how to work your way out of it. And sometimes you win, sometimes the bear gets you, but as you do it, you learn how to deal with those situations a little bit easier, when you're playing a regular run.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about just some of the things I learned from doing those one region challenges, because I did rewatch, I think, my Ash Canyon one a while back, and it was interesting to see what I didn't know at that time compared to what I know now. And one of the big things I've learned is just how important traveling is. Like I would get stuck in an area and kind of like build out from there and play it almost too safe, where I'd like, well, I have to go back to the only safe place I know. Whereas if I had just been willing to like quickly push out more, I could have explored the map more quickly. But yeah, you learn a lot from doing those challenges.
And that's that risk reward thing that I think you do. You know, I've heard you say it in some of your videos where you're like, that was a bit risky. I probably shouldn't have pushed it that hard. I know that I do the same thing. I've been doing that with some of my challenges here of late. It's like I'm being too cavalier. I'm progressing too hard because I'm trying to get something done, and you're sacrificing health or something to try to get to an end. But there's that risk reward. You're hoping that your risk is going to reward you later, and you're going to be able to recover and do all that. Piccolo has a good suggestion here. She says that she has an idea called the polite apocalypse, where you can't enter a building with a loading screen because you're too polite to break in. It's almost like the burglar challenge in a way, where you have to break in.
Yeah, that's neat. It's kind of like I think this is how the original Outer Loper was played back in the day. This was back before my time, but I think the first people who did Outer Loper, they allowed places like the Mountaineer's Hut and probably mines and caves as well. It was a little bit more forgiving. A lot of the people who are playing Outer Loper now, it's not so much a thematic thing, it's just they're trying to get the challenge right, and so they don't let themselves go inside those places because it kind of makes it a bit too easy for what they're looking for. Like if you can go in the mines and get 40 coal, then it kind of takes away a lot of the challenge.
And then Toasty Bits is making a comment, and I actually watched this. This was quite interesting. He recently did a D&D inspired challenge where he had to roll the die to determine whether he could do certain actions. So like he couldn't enter a building, certain wolf struggles. There was a whole thing about it. It looked a bit complicated, Toasty, and I think you could tweak that, but it was an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, I did a short run a while back where I rolled a die on screen for a bunch of stuff like that. I just made it way too complicated, so it ended up being too much of a slog to just like keep track of everything. So I'm planning to redo that at some point with mods. I think I still haven't used mods, but I think there's a few places where it would be nice.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to fix that part. But anyway, go ahead.
Old Man Spiker, are the ice caves in HRV allowed on Outer Loper? So the easy answer is typically yes. There's a few different types of outer. Some of the people doing like the insanely hard, like purist outer Nogoa, like just these ridiculously hard challenges, they have special rules. So essentially when you do purist outer, you're typically allowed to walk through those caves, but you can't loot them. And there are even a few people who are doing, I think it's called True Outer. Got Milk and Nut on YouTube is the only one I know who's actually played it. He does no commentary, but he is just incredibly good at the game. If you want to learn how to be like at the top of the game with these insane challenges, even though his runs are no commentary, I've learned so much just from watching him play silently. Like he's really good at the game. But yeah,
you'll have to give me a link, and we'll link that in the comments.
Yeah, I can just type it into the chat for right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
But that should be it. If it's not, then it's close.
Oh, I can't say how many people. Oh, it's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Ark will give me that on a DM, and I'll post it in the comments. So, person he's talking about. But I can't even stress enough how much I've learned from watching other players. I mean, like Wands and Only was one of my favorites early on because, and this is no fault, and I'm not going to pick on anybody for any stretch of the means. And this is where the difference between YouTube and Twitch kind of come in for me. Being an older player, some of the stuff that goes on Twitch, is there's a lot of noise going on because they've got all this interaction and all these things going on, and I'm really there kind of to watch the game and with a little bit of narration of what they're doing. And so Wands was always interesting because he was very good about explaining what he was doing. He was a very methodical player, and he always played on like insane levels of difficulty. So me taking my little stalker runs and applying some of those things was a I was like, oh, I can really do a lot of other things. And I owe Archimedes some things too on that. I give him credit for a lot of like the goats that I know and not getting sprains as often and things a lot like that. So you learn so much from watching other people. Hello, Miss Cams. Welcome in.
Stinlin, let's see, playing around with not allowing myself to eat the same thing more than 3 times in a row. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, a way to sort of force some variety into the diet. That's a cool idea.
That would be a difficult challenge, especially because a lot of times, like on harder levels, you do kind of live off of cattails a lot. So it would make you have to do some more scrounging around and be more methodical about, okay, I can't have this dog food because I got to save it for a couple days down the road.
Yeah, it's actually one of my minor complaints about the calorie balance, I guess, is that the cattails in particular are just so strong compared to every other food. So there's not really much of a like eating acorns or
Bannock comes to mind.
yeah, burdock. There's a few things, right? Because it like takes time and you have to like get them all set, and then it's like I could have just eaten 5 cattails and it would have been
And they
half
don't
the time.
expire.
Yeah.
They last forever. But that could also be a challenge right there. You can only have, cattails every 3rd day, or you're only allowed 6 a day or 5 a day or whatever. That's the beautiful thing of what we're talking about, is that you can take any level you want and you can tweak just one aspect of it just to give yourself a little nudge to get a little better. I did a lot of that with Stalker early on. It's like I got to learn how to use the bow better and force myself to use the bow. Can't use the guns, or I could only use the pistol to defend myself against the wolves and stuff like that. But there's lots of those little things where you can just tweak it just a little bit, and it doesn't have to be crazy.
So you mentioned earlier this run I'm doing now, which is sort of a challenge mashup of a few different things that I didn't think that they would be good on their own. Like they wouldn't be quite enough for a full series. So I just kind of threw a bunch of stuff together, and only one of them is my own invention, and that's the Beneath Open Sky challenge, which I really like after only playing a few episodes of it. So kind of the idea behind that was I started from a point of I don't really like how they give you a cave every 50 feet, right? Like there's always someplace safe really close by. So you can go to a cave, you can go to a house, you can go to a trailer, you can find a stove out in the middle of nowhere, right? Like there's just all these places that are safe to start your fire and sleep. And so I came up with this idea of, okay, I'm going to force myself to sleep outside, but not only that, if I have a fire, it has to be unprotected. So I can't sleep in a cave, I can't use a stove. And it just adds so much to the whole idea of, oh, I'm going to search for the, this really nice, closely windproof spot, right? Like not completely windproof, but mostly windproof. And it just adds a lot to looking for those little nooks and crannies.
Yeah, because not every one of the car places to sleep is the best place to hide.
Oh, the cars in particular, it's very rare for a car to have a nice spot to put a fire nearby. Um,
Which is funny because I don't know if you've watched it yet, Ark, but Zach's new Outer Misery challenge puts him in the same situation of sleeping in cars with unprotected fires. If you haven't seen Archimedes run where he's doing this mystery mashup thing, he's doing a lot of the same things. So there's a lot of pain and suffering going on in the TLD world if you go watch the right people.
yeah, I did see Zach's take on Outer Misery, and actually, the guy I mentioned before, I'll put his name in the chat. Got Milk and Not. He had a really long Outer Misery series back when. This was back when it first came out, because he and I talk a fair amount, just on YouTube and on Reddit, and we both wanted to like take the new mode and kind of amp it up a bit. And so I did a short run. I only did I think it was a 4-episode series, and I basically concluded that it's a little bit easier than Outer Nogoa because you do get the healing and you get the birch bark early. So I decided not to continue it, but he has a nice long run of it, and I'm sure Zach's run will be good. I've only seen the first episode. I'm sure there's more to come.
Yeah, I think he left it open at the end, but yeah, it's a very punishing thing. And again, I go back and I want everybody to realize that it's like if you're a Voyager player, just do the same thing. Do it on Voyager and don't sleep inside. It's really, really eye-opening in what you can and can't do as far as where you can sleep and how to keep a fire going and how to stay warm when it's a blizzard outside. There's lots of things to learn from it. Clippy says, I'm currently on a custom challenge run, really like it's an intercoper with endless nights, and it's forbidden to grab torches from a fire, making light scarce and important. I've heard where people do that where you can't pull torches, you have to make them. I've seen that one before.
Yeah, I think Zach came up with the intercoper idea, and it was just I forget all the things, but it's like slightly less healing and no pulled torches. I've tried several times to make the no pulled torches thing work, and it just doesn't quite work with some spawns because you need oil to craft a torch, and you need cloth, of course. So those are both things that have specific spawn requirements. It's mostly
Mountain is very helpful for that.
Yeah, it's mostly the oil that's an issue because most places you can spawn, you can get a little bit of cloth, or you could even, tear up your socks just to get your first torch or two going. But sometimes you spawn somewhere and there just isn't much oil around, and so it can mess you up. Like if you spawn in HRV, in particular, you need light to leave that region. So if you can't pull torches and you can't make a torch because you have no oil, then you can't
stuck.
get out. Yeah.
So there's definitely limitations to all that, and with all that. See, I don't want to give away too much because I don't know how many people have actually watched your latest, because that one just hit yesterday. So I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I want to touch on the fact of how you took the challenge that you started and how you're like, okay, I need to tweak this, and I don't know, without giving away too much. I don't know if you can talk about where your thought processes were with some of the tweaks you did.
Yeah, well, in certain ways, I was tweaking it back to be more like the original challenge. So there were certain aspects. One thing I can talk about pretty easily in the custom settings, there's a setting for wake player when freezing near a fire, it's called. And that's on for Pilgrim and Voyager. And it's off for higher difficulties. So originally when I came up with this Beneath Open Sky challenge, I was planning to use that just to allow me to just, you know, like start my fire, get in the car, sleep for 10 hours, and then either I sleep the whole time or um, the wind comes, blows the fire out, and then instead of me just losing my run, I wake up when I start to freeze because of that handy setting. So it doesn't really make it easier, it just makes it less grindy because I no longer have to sleep for an hour, check the wind, sleep for another hour, check the wind. I can just sleep.
And it does save you a lot of time because going through that sequence, if you extend that out through an hour's run or an hour and a half or whatever on a recording, I mean, you could clip 10 minutes off by not having to do that. So I thought that was an interesting addition to what you did.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else in that run that really fits the theme of this, just as far as trying to get it just right. Oh yeah, I can go ahead and say this too, that I decided to add, because I was combining two challenges. So there's the hand luggage challenge where you can only carry the 10 items. And then there was my challenge where I have to sleep outside, which means most of the regions I have to take my bedroll to. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought.
I think I know you're going with this, and if this helps at all, but you made it so that the equipment started you out with a bedroll, and then you also omitted it as part of your carry. So in the hand luggage challenge that Piccolo came up with, you have 5 items of clothing you can wear, and you have 5 items of things you can take with you. You can trade off one of others to carry, but you end up with 10 items total. So with his sleeping outside part of that, he made the bedroll exempt.
Right, that was it. Yeah, so I could have the extra item, because it just felt like it was a little bit unfair to have to carry that to places like Timberwolf where there are no beds outside, and no cars, of course. Right, so to sort of keep in the spirit of the challenge, because if I was just playing hand luggage, I would pretty much never take it anywhere, right? I would never actually use that slot up just to have a place to sleep. So just
And
little tweaks like that to.
and I think it was a fair trade-off because you're still playing in the spirit of the 5 and 5. You're just, and you could call it like an accessory slot, like the backpack. The bedroll is in an accessory slot because you're sleeping outside, and in order not to completely limit, your entire run to 3 regions, you're allowed to carry that as an extra item. So I think it was a fair trade-off in the way you were setting up what you were doing. And by all means,
Right.
go watch the video. It came out yesterday. The link is in the description. It is a blast. I had a joy watching it, by the way.
Well, that's very nice of you. And yeah, actually, the other rule that I might not have said anything about is there's no snow shelters either in my challenge. So it's like I have to have the bedroll. Like I just can't sleep at all if I don't have it. Um,
But if
so
you go
yeah, I think
watch the
that's
video, you'll see what we're talking about. Like I said, and I don't want to give away too much, but it's very relevant to what we were talking about with where you can take little things. He also made some other settings changes that actually almost bring in one of the other challenges, and this is the one that Jitwire gets credit for, is the Grimloper, where you take the severity of the weather that's in like Dead Man and the lack of healing in that, but then you put in, animals that are almost difficult, if impossible, to hunt because they run away at the, as soon as you walk on the map. So there's a lot of little tidbits in there that you can do to make things more difficult, make things more, you know, in all different directions. Either it's with custom codes or with rules and all that stuff. And that's the whole reason why we're talking. And it's so much fun when you can do that. This is the thing that I love the most, is the early game and setting up and getting to a certain part.
Yeah, the setting for the passive wildlife, that was something I had tried to fit into my challenges several times, just, you know, when I was in the planning stages, and I just couldn't come up with a good time to use it. And so then as I was coming up with the rework for this, I thought, well, I'm going to be stuck outside. It's obviously quite hard because I'm having to change the rules. So this might be a time. Plus, I had just, not to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen it, but I had been doing those perfect misery on stream where I couldn't take any damage at all. Like, you take any damage at all, no matter how little, instant game over. And I had actually gotten pretty far into one of those, and then let's just say there was an unfortunate wolf situation. So maybe I was a little bit annoyed about that and said, you know what, for this other challenge, we're just going to make the wolves not an issue.
That was heartbreaking, by the way.
It really was.
It was heartbreaking.
I am going to be back to streaming that pretty much the next time I have a chance to. And I'm going to completely redo my whole philosophy towards how I deal with the wolves, right? Like, I'm just going to treat them as this insanely bad threat that has to be, like, completely carefully avoided at all times, do as much as I can to never even get close to one. Because it's just so painful to lose one of those runs. I mean, you know how much work goes into getting a run even to day 2. Let alone, I think it was probably like day 10 or close to it.
Yeah, you were quite a ways into that run. Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah,
Again, I don't want to spoil anything.
everything.
You guys need to go watch the VODs. It was a live stream he did. It was very interesting. And Toasty Bits, if you're still watching and you're listening, this is what I was talking about the other day. He was playing Misery Arc, and I mentioned to him that you were doing this thing with no damage, and he thought I was crazy. He thought I was yanking his chain. So it's out there. He did it, and he lasted quite a while, and then at the absolute worst moment, when the game is just starting to turn, he has this problem.
Pretty much. Yeah, no, I'm convinced. I mean, this is certainly in that realm of, this is an absolutely crazy challenge, right? Like, there is no reason to do this. And I'm not even sure how I came up with the original idea for it, right? Because it makes no sense. You spawn in, how do you even get somewhere without losing health? Right? It's like, it just makes no sense on first glance. But yeah, just the fact that it's theoretically possible to start, and I think I can take a run to 50 days eventually.
Uh-oh, hang on. He just fell off. Let me get him reconnected. Okay, can you hear me now?
All right, this seems to be working.
Okay, I had to start another stream because it died. It completely just crashed. So hopefully everybody will come over here real quick and we can finish up, but... Oh, that's so frustrating. Hi, Lil.
So we'll have to change chat rooms too? Let me just...
Yeah, you're going to have to... I started another run, so if you're still in there, holler at everybody to reconnect.
Yeah, please. I'm going to tell people.
They can jump over and we can finish up. Yeah, this is one of the problems with YouTube and that is that when you have like this Streamlabs crash, you can't recover it. You got to start another. You got to start another session. So, as much as I don't want to, but you know, I don't want to just leave everybody hanging either. So if we can get everybody back over here, maybe I can stitch the two together and re-upload the VOD later. Hey, Stars. Thank you. Welcome in. We had some technical difficulties, but hopefully we get everybody over here fairly quickly and we can finish what we were talking about. Although I'm not even sure I remember.
Okay, I think we got everybody over here mostly.
I think so.
I've got the new chat open. Looks like we got most of the old people here.
All right, sorry about that. Streamlabs just upped and crashed. I saw Arc disappear, and then I tried to bring him back on, and then it fell apart. So
Yeah, there's always going to be something. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
yeah, appreciate it more than you know. What, old man Spiker? We were talking about custom challenges. Oh, good lord, what have I been doing the last hour? Yeah, Streamlabs it has its moments. I would like to use OBS more, but the collab cam really helps us here. Because my hope is down the road as I get more going into this, we'll be able to have little roundtable discussions where we can have like Archimedes on and Jitwire, and maybe have a third or fourth, a fourth or fifth person where we can have a big roundtable discussion. I think that would be fun. You still hear me, Ark? I don't hear you.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I was just
trying
to catch
I
up
just want
on
to make
chat.
sure everything was good. One catastrophe at a time.
Yeah, to be completely honest, I have completely forgotten what our topic was when we got disconnected. So I was just
I don't know what exactly we were talking about. We were kind of touching on a little bit of what you did to change your run, but I was looking at on one of the older on one of the older ones. One of the questions was the passive wildlife. There's what was it, the Master Hunter challenge? Somebody mentioned that in the other chat.
Oh, yeah.
That's an old one.
I think I remember. Yeah, that was before my time. I remember seeing that one on either on the Hinterland forums or just some old thing like that. Something from more than 5 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I think that was one where it was set to that same deal where you set all all of it was set to passive, and you had to hunt so many different things. So yeah, I remember that challenge a little bit. And Toasty, I have OBS and I have Streamlabs. The only reason I decided to do the Streamlabs thing was the collab cam. It actually cost me money to have it, and I can have up to 11 people on the broadcast at the same time and have individual channels for them. So that's the biggest reason why I went with that. But I think you can port it over to OBS. So plus, you all have to forgive me. I'm like 59 years old. All this technology stuff drives me crazy.
Okay, so I have a question for everyone. Ever since I saw the stat in the stats screen where it tracks all your stuff and it said longest fire, and I built a whole challenge based off of that. I've been really curious, can anybody think of a way to use the number of can openers found? Incorporate that into some sort of challenge, because that is a stat that they track and I have no idea why. It's such an odd thing to put in there. Oh, we were talking about perfect misery.
That's right. That's right. We were, weren't we?
But yeah.
What was the can? Okay, before we get back to perfect misery, because you need to finish that story. But
yeah,
what was the can opener thing?
It's just such a crazy stat for them to track. So in the main page where it's like you've survived this long, you've eaten this many kilograms of meat, you've lived this long in each of these regions, all of those long stats. There's one for total can openers found, and it actually tracks it. So if you find 4 can openers, then it's gonna keep track of that and keep it there. So I'm just trying to figure out, is there any way to actually use that for anything? Like, why is it in there? What possible purpose could it serve?
Maybe you just started the next pill popping pilgrim in the great can opener hunt.
Exactly.
So no, I think I think what we were talking about, and I was trying to get Toasty's attention on that, was that he thought it was crazy when I was telling him about your perfect misery run, and then we were
Right.
talking about your unfortunate incident with the wolf. But
Yeah, and I think I finished that story, and I was talking about just how, like, because I think I already said this, but I'm not even sure how I came up with the idea of doing that challenge, because it doesn't really make any sense, right? Like, it's not something that you would think of, just because obviously with where you spawn, you're going to take damage.
yeah, I think that's where you did leave off. I think that's what you were talking about. Is like, why would you do this? What's the end game
Yeah.
for
And
trying to do this perfectly?
somebody, I think it was LD, was saying in chat earlier that that just sounds insane, right? And it's like, there's no way you'd be able to do that. And in a way, it's not a challenge that I would do if it weren't for that factor, right? Like, it's not something that I would just do for fun. It's something that, because it's so crazy and because somehow it's just barely possible at the start, that's what turns it into something that I would even think about trying to do. Sort of bringing some ideas of what's it called, where you're restricted, sort of like writing poetry can be in some ways more interesting than just writing a story, because you've got more limitations, and so you're doing this whole creative process, but the more limited you are, the more you can be creative. I don't know if I explained that very well, but
I think that makes sense, though. You're trying to shrink down the way you do it in order to still tell a bigger story.
yeah, sort of shrink down the possible space of options, because you know, obviously there's just lots of ways to play this game, more than we could ever think of, and so by building those restrictions in, it can help to get new ideas.
See, I think the thing that would open things up for you, and I think that's part of what you were doing when you reworked your mashup, was if misery was in the custom settings, because you know how you can base it off of, oh, I can base it off Pilgrim, I can base it off this. If misery had a baseline in the custom challenges, and you could make the animals passive, and you could change a few things, I think that would benefit from what you're trying to do on the mashup.
Oh yeah, and I think it probably will be one day. I know in one of the dev diaries, I think last year, they mentioned that they were going to do a complete revamp of
Yeah,
all the custom options.
custom menus, and they were also supposed to be embracing mods too. So
Yeah,
God hoping they
and
do that too.
yeah, I would love to see mods for this on the Steam Workshop, where just like, because you know, you can do mods right now, but it has a pretty high technical, right? Like, you have to kind of know what you're doing, and you have to get in there and do stuff that most people aren't going to take the time to do. But if the mods were just on the Steam Workshop, I think a lot more people would get into them.
And you know, we mentioned this last week when I was talking to DH Dunn about that. We were talking about it a little bit, and I think the biggest fear, and it kind of falls into you and myself and other creators, is sometimes mods can break your game and they can cause you issues. And when you're trying to do episodics and stuff like that, and even though you back up your saves and you do all this stuff, you don't need the game getting broken over something that isn't supported. And so it's frustrating when you already have problems.
Yeah, well,
without all that.
One major trick, and I actually learned this from Loon's Loon, who's another really good Long Dark YouTuber. so he does a lot of modded runs, and his trick is he creates an entirely separate copy of the whole game, and I think you can even make it as like its own launchable within Steam if
You know what? I
if you
I know
use
exactly what you're talking about because Jetwire and I did the same thing for when we were doing the Cougar 1.0 versus 2.0. We had to go back
Gotcha.
and use the Steam database
Yep.
and pull the old copy out because it was only out for 4 days. And I haven't done this yet, and I'm gonna have to put money in the change jar for this, but I actually went back and found the original Reddit post for Dead World and found Zach's original VOD for when he streamed it and saw exactly what version of the game was. So it's like 1.84 or whatever it is. And I found that. And I actually have it as a working copy in a separate folder. So I
Nice.
hadn't thought about that with the mods, but that is a very good idea to
Yeah,
create
so
that.
that's the idea is you have an entirely new copy and you use just that, you install your mods on that. And that way, even if the main game gets updated, because one of the problems with the mods is that when they release a new major patch to the actual game, it can mess up the old mods. So you can have like the up-to-date real game, and then you can have your mod thing that's like not going to change at all because you've got it locked away. So that's how he does it.
That's a really
What
good
was
idea. I
like,
hadn't thought about doing it from that perspective because I I wanted to do that challenge on what it was originally built on because there was no Ash Canyon, there was no far territories, there was no cooking. The food system would be so much more restrictive. So I wanted to experience it in its originality because the current version, you're living way too long than what you could back in the day. So it was very
yeah.
unique to be able to do that. So I would have to try that. That's a heck of an idea because I would love to go get those maps from the long development and a lot of other things that would be fun.
Yeah, this is actually something that I've wanted to do for quite a while because you hear people talking about like if you go back to when Interloper first came out and compare it to now, they say, well, the game is so much easier now. You know, you've got all this extra food, you've got more clothing. They just added more like the flour and the oil, and they added the ptarmigan insulation, right? So it in some sense the game keeps getting easier. And so the thing that I keep hearing is if you go back to that time, the game's not going to be nearly as easy. And what I wonder though is how much of it is that, and how much of it is just that we've gotten so good at the game, because there's a lot of players who have been playing for years, and you know we all help each other out. We all learn things from each other. There's these minute things that we know about how the keys work, about the most efficient way to collect coal and use the sticks, and time your fires, get around food poisoning to get extra calories, right? Like there's just all these tricks. And so I think that if we actually went back to that version, we'd be surprised that, you know, yes, it's harder, but I don't think it would be that much harder just because people have improved so much.
I think I would agree with you on that. For the most part, yeah, there are some extra things in the game, but to watch you do some of the other stuff that you do, whether they're there or not, you're still living. Like with Outer Misery. Yeah, you're getting a little extra food in that deal, but you're still holding yourself to such a high level of not allowing yourself damage with limited clothing, no matches right away. So yeah, it doesn't change that much of the game. It's made it somewhat easier in some aspects, but your skill set still changes how you play. You know not to go out in the blizzard. You know not to sleep outside if you don't have a fire, and those things are the things that we all made those mistakes early on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what people are looking for with these, you know, new challenges and just making up all the rules that we've, you know, all the stuff we've said so far, I remember back to pretty much the first time I ever played this game, which was on Stalker difficulty, and I think I was in Milton, and that experience was so fantastic because I didn't know all the mechanics and I didn't know where anything was, right? So I'm just like exploring, you know, finding a lantern was a huge deal, right? Even though I had matches, if I had known how to do all those things, I could have just started a fire, pulled 50 million torches, and changed them everywhere. So I think a lot of what we're trying to do when we create these new challenges is to sort of recreate that experience of the first time we played the game. Just trying to get it to feel right in terms of this is a struggle.
I think that's well said. I really do. It does add a certain amount of enthusiasm. One of my biggest struggles is, and kudos to everybody. And again, this goes back to the whole thing that Zach preaches: is there's no way to play the game wrong. But the people that are able to last 500 days, 1,000 days, whatever, that's so hard for me because I'm so much into I like the meat and potatoes of the early game of I got to get to that point where I can survive. And so by doing the challenges and all that stuff, it brings about that newness. It revitalizes that excitement. And that part I have to agree with you on. I think that's what we do. That's the reason why we do these things. It kind of brings back that newness.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what you said about Zach's quote, he says, I remember this because it always just slightly annoys me when he says it. He says that as long as you're alive,
you're not
playing the
wrong.
game right. And I would amend that slightly to as long as you're having fun, you're not playing wrong. Because some of the most fun I've had is when the game does kill me, right? Like you need that pushback where the game has a chance to actually kill you. And you know, not everybody does. Lots of people can have fun playing just like the 500-day game, or you know, they don't want to lose all that work. But for those people who do want to experience that extreme struggle, you know, you don't necessarily need to live to be able to say, oh, I'm doing this right. Just enjoy it however you want.
Yeah, I think the spirit of what he's saying there is just that you know, don't let somebody tell you you're playing wrong, because regardless of how you play. So yeah, I understand where you're going with what he's saying, and
Oh yeah, no, and that was
you're
just
right. It's
that was just me picking nits, as I like
yeah,
to.
it is. Yeah. We all have our style, and that's the thing. It's like you know, you may watch one person play one way and another plays a different way, and you're like, oh, that's a neat idea. I hadn't seen anybody do that before, and you start to mash and meld and stuff. Going back to the thing we don't want to spoil, one of the things that I thought was funny in that whole deal was your argument against the torch, and it's like might have changed the outcome if you hadn't have been frustrated about using that technique. So
Oh, you're talking about the specific way that I don't like to use a torch. I see what you're saying.
and again, for those of you guys that are coming late or get in the second half of this, Archimedes just dropped a video yesterday, and it's linked in the description on the old one. I'll make sure it's on this one too, because we've got two parts here. Of where he's done a mashup of both hand luggage and outer misery, correct? And then he was avoiding Mystery Lake altogether, and he was just making this crazy challenge. And he ended up having to restart without saying too much. And one of the reasons was because of a wolf, but it was very frustrating on that front.
Yeah. I think you might actually be conflating.
Oh, I'm confusing the two. I'm
two
confusing the
different
two.
runs.
Yes.
'Cause
And you kept saying that with the live, and I just did it. Yeah, the perfect misery
Yeah.
run was the one with the incident where he was being insistent that that the rock and torch method was cheesy, I think is how you put it.
Yes, it does not feel appropriate to you. It's
But
too
yet, if
cheesy
it
for
had
my
just
taste.
been cheesy, things would have changed. I see Stars has a good one up here. I was trying to read it earlier, and he said that he'd been doing a challenge that a couple of his viewers helped him brainstorm. It's the perfect trophy challenge, trophy hunter challenge, interloper settings, max predator spawn and aggression, and the goal is to cover yourself in furs. So there again, here's another idea from another wonderful streamer who's got, you know, another idea on how to make the game interesting, how to make it new and fresh. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the game is that you can take away something, add something, change something, and it becomes a whole nother dimension.
I just scrolled up here and saw another comment from Stars that I had missed. He says, I did my own challenge, which was the Starry Night challenge, and it did a lot of what you just said. So I'm not sure. This was a little bit back. Just based on the name, Starry Night, that sounds very similar to my Beneath Open Sky idea, because that's one where I have to sleep outside, not under a roof. So I'll certainly take a look at that and see what you did with that. Sounds interesting.
Now, see, I saw one that somebody had posted, and I've been kind of wanting to try it myself, and I thought it would be more of a stream than it would be anything else. But somebody had made a comment about the old movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and where that was the only place you were allowed to sleep. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, and I was trying to do a twist where, like, okay, what if you started in DP and you had to get to the airport and you could only sleep in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
Yeah,
But it had the
unfortunately,
twist.
I think they changed it so you can no longer sleep in planes, which I was extremely disappointed with.
You can't sleep in. Okay.
I don't think you can sleep in planes anymore. You can sleep in cars
So
and
it-
trucks.
So the trucks and the trains would work, but interesting.
Yeah.
But I thought that was kind of a fun twist in the same idea. Is just, you know, just to create something silly, where, you know, it's like, okay, you gotta pull this off and stuff. So, yeah, I love the creativity with it we get within the community for sure.
So what you said about the stream only challenge reminded me of an idea I had. So this is something that I was going to keep secret, but the more I've thought about it, I just don't know if I'm ever going to do it, and I don't care if someone else wants to do it first. It's quite the crazy challenge. So a lot of you may be aware that I was having a lot of computer crashing issues back with my old setup. And at one point in particular, I had traveled to the forged, come back, and then the game crashed. And so I lost like 2 hours of work because, of course, it only saves when you go inside or when you get a sprain or so on. So my idea, and this goes back to the idea of building a challenge based on what's already in the game. And in this case, it's actually a limitation of the game that gives the idea for the challenge. My idea was to stream an interloper run with the goal of being fully equipped without ever saving the game.
And explain fully equipped.
So fully equipped would be bow and arrows, bear coat, rabbit skin hat, or I guess now the cougar hat, although that would be quite tough to do. Rabbit mitts. Right, so all the best in slot clothing and the moosehide satchel. Now, there's a few details. Obviously, you would not be able to get the technical backpack because that requires going inside, which would save the game. So it's a bit technical. I kind of did
no
a little
loading
bit of
screens.
thinking about it, and you have to start in Forlorn Muskeg. but yeah, it would be an absolutely insane challenge, and this is why I don't care if somebody else wants to do it first, because then I won't have to do it.
So essentially, you couldn't
Um,
go inside any place that would create a save. So any
right.
place that
But
you would go inside that create a save, and obviously loading between regions doesn't matter because it doesn't save. But
right, so you
yeah,
can transition regions, which is the interesting thing. So you actually have a fairly large area of Broken Railroad, Forlorn Muskeg, Mountain Town, Mystery Lake, Ravine, Coastal Highway, and Bleak Inlet if you're crazy, and you can't sleep. That's the thing. It's quite tricky, right? So you need to get coffee or birch bark
I was going
teas,
to say
or
birch bark.
I would say rosehip pies, although I don't think you can get any flour if you can't go inside. Um,
Faye, it's a typical college weekend, is what it would be. No sleep.
yeah, yeah. I was actually thinking about how will I pull this off if I do it, and so I actually did a test the other day and realized that I can pause my game and put my computer to sleep, and when I bring it back up, I can just pick up where I left off. So it would be like a full weekend of streaming and just pause the game at night.
That sounds like a marathon type deal. You got that?
Yeah. So, Old Man Spiker, you can get to the top of Timberwolf without saving. However, you can't forge and get to the top, because to forge you need to be in Forlorn Muskeg, and to get to Timberwolf you'd have to get to Pleasant Valley, which means you'd have to go through either the dam or the mine, and both of those would save the game. You would not be able to enter Pleasant Valley or any points northeast of there.
It would be tricky. It would be tricky.
Yeah, and it's another one of these silly challenges, and it's like there's no reason to do it other than I had the idea and it could be done. That's the only reason.
Well, and a lot of the challenges too, like you said, like why would you do Perfect Misery, or why would you do, why would you want to play the game without animals? You've even mentioned that to Jitwire and us, that you don't understand that part of when we want to play Dead World. It's just because you have this idea. It's like the mountain. It's there. You want to climb it.
Yeah, and I mean it was kind of the same thing. I don't know if you ever saw this. This was a while back, but my Cooking 5 on day 1 Loper. It's like I had the idea. I have to do it. I never want to micro harvest again, but I had to do it at least once after I had the idea.
Yeah, I mean, well, you do have the propensity for spending a good amount of time tackling a project, because I sat and watched you for about 2 hours stream, getting up on the roof at Mountaineer's Hut to fix the roof before safe house customization. So
I completely forgot
you have
about
a
that.
propensity for that.
I still get comments on that saying, you can just fix it, right, with the woodworking. It's like, hey, that happened after I did this.
Anybody that could spend an hour trying to position a frying pan just the right way has got great chutzpah for the game.
Well, for certain aspects of it, at least.
Yes. So Stars was saying that the Starry Night challenge was an interloper settings, endless night, highest aurora frequency, and the only feat is celestial navigation. You spawn in Timberwolf Mountain, and you have to get the camera from Sundered Pass, and then go back to Timberwolf Mountain and take pictures of the aurora from the summit.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So it's like a big travel challenge. That's neat.
That sounds kind of fun. It's almost like a secondary hopeless rescue kind of thing. That does sound interesting. I like that one. What we need is like a big depository of all these challenges to go someplace. Because they're all kind of spread apart.
Fair Angel asks, have you worked out how long it would take curing stuff to make a bow, then cure bear hide, then make the coat and all the rest? I mean, I imagine it would take somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 days. The The main problem is, and I need to do some testing on this, I don't know. So if you pass time for an hour and you let it complete, that saves the game. I don't know, and I'm hoping that if you pass time for like 12 hours and you cancel before it completes, that you would not save the game, because you do need a way to get through a lot of time. If that doesn't work, there's a few other ways to do it, like fishing is a big one, and I wouldn't even want to use tip-ups. And then there's also the harvest cancel trick, where you like try to harvest a large object and cancel before
Cooking
it
water
finishes.
would be another one if you had enough fuel.
Now Stars says if you cancel, it doesn't save. So that sounds like my plan would work, where I can just go in a cave or a snow shelter somewhere and just repeatedly pass time for 12 hours, but cancel before it reaches the end. Which is nice, because it gives you the little countdown, so you wouldn't risk accidentally going too far on that.
This sounds like a really good suggestion to Hinterland when they revamp the customization thing, is to have a no save challenge or a no save deal. Because, you know, like, what is it? I'm trying to think of it. Is Subnautica. Subnautica has that one version where you get the one life and it doesn't save the game at all. So no matter what, you can't save the game. It's all one run. So that would be interesting.
No. It saves the game. It's just that it's a hardcore run. So it's like The Long Dark in the sense that you can come back to the run later, but if you die, it's over.
Okay, it's permadeath. I was thinking if there was no save. I was thinking there was no save on that.
Yeah, no, this is purely a I don't think there's any justifiable reason to want this, other than it would be really funny to have your bear coat and all your stuff and then be like, oh, I'm gonna back out to the main menu and resume game, and it's like there you are at the spawn point again. It's like 20 hours later of intense playtime, and you just lose everything because
nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
And then Piccolo was saying something, you could dev console save if you wanted to do an episodic. I've seen people do that. I'm not sure I follow 100%.
Yeah, I've seen Blades do that, because he plays a lot of Outer, so it's hard to save the game without wasting time, because you can't go inside. So he'll sometimes just it's essentially using a mod to just instantly save the game no matter where you are. But yeah, I mean, that would work. It's just that it wouldn't have the nice ending to the like multi-day stream where I quit out of the game and come back in and my character is just a fresh new character spawned into Forlorn Muskeg.
He's wanting the pain of the restart is what he's wanting. Yeah, the dev console does, now that I think about it, because I've used the dev console quite a bit when I'm doing like some of the thumbnail stuff and everything. So like the last time Arc was on, I did the one where we had all the stuff on the picture, and that was all dev console. There's no way I could have done that without it, so I use that quite a bit. I do like the can opener challenge. We definitely, yeah, Fave says I might try the can opener challenge. That is an interesting idea of, like, you know, how many are actually in the world.
I don't think we ever worked out exactly what the can opener challenge is, though.
Other than that you said you needed to come up with something because there's a counter for it, so...
Yeah, like, I mean, I guess just get as many can openers as you can, but that doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't really seem that great.
Actually, it seems like you need a timer on it.
I wonder if you can find them... Okay, so there was, I was watching somebody do beachcombing in the pill-popping pilgrim challenge, and they found a whetstone in a backpack on the beach, which was interesting because previous to that, I think most people thought whetstones, you know, once you run out, they're gone. But now I'm thinking, what if you can find a can opener from beachcombing? And so, like, some crazy person, one of these people who does like 1,000-day runs, could try to find like 100 can openers on a run. and that
I
could be
can
the
I
challenge.
can say this much from the beachcombing thing because of the Dead World thing. Um, Everybody, including you, were all saying that, oh, you'll last forever in beachcombing. And when I got down to the very last part of that run, I was left with beachcombing, and at first it wasn't working. And then the visual enhancements came out, and suddenly beachcombing became a boon. And so I've had this thing running on its last leg for almost 9 weeks of nothing but beachcombing. And I have yet to see a can opener. So with a little bit of experience of doing a ton of beachcombing thanks to Dead World, but mind you that it's set on like really ugly spawning. So I don't know if you can on lower settings, but as far as the Dead
Yeah,
World the code, I have yet to find a can opener.
you have to keep in mind though, I had never seen a whetstone from it either. I mean, have you ever found a whetstone?
I don't think I've seen a whetstone either. It'd be
Because the thing is,
interesting because I've got so much documentation on it now. I'd have to go back and kind of
there's
filter
not
through it.
that many containers on the beach.
No.
So, and then like, what are the chances that you open a random container and it has a can opener in it? Of all things, it's probably, I mean, it's got to be less than 1%. So, I think you could do a lot of beachcombing and never find a can opener, and yet it could still be technically possible.
It's still probably possible. It's just the probability is very low. It's
Yeah.
probably got a very low probability. Not impossible, but a very low probability. As much as I've done, I've found a lot of things. You know, it's just they don't seem to find a lot of useful things like food, but it's definitely. I don't think I've seen can openers. I don't think I've seen like torches. Torches don't seem to wash up. Little things like that. I never see, obviously, no tools of any kind. Lots of just simple stuff: cloth, sticks, cattails, fish.
Well,
Of
there's the
course.
fish. There's the fish, so that would be the main source of calories. Although, I don't know, did you allow those or?
Yeah, I allowed. Yeah, I was pretty much consuming anything and everything and stuff. So
Okay, now I have to ask you, and this may ruin your whole experience.
oh
Are you
no,
aware of the bug with beachcombing?
probably not because I don't know exactly what we're talking about with the
So
bug.
this was discovered during the pill popping pilgrim challenge. So essentially, if you're in a coastal region and a blizzard starts, if you go inside or through a load screen, it messes up all the loot. And so you don't get your loot refresh. So you actually have to stay outside while the blizzard goes on if you want to get the full loot reset from the blizzard.
I'm probably have seen that without knowing what it was.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah, because there were people coming up with lots of theories about, what exactly is not making it work correctly. And we think we've got it pretty much nailed down now.
I think if I go back to like some of the last, like probably last 3 episodes, because I haven't done a new episode in a while. I've kind of put it on a back burner, and I'll do like, once a month, once every 6 week type deal, because it's repetitive. All I'm doing is going back and forth between Desolation Point, Crumbling Highway, and Coastal, and just beachcombing. It gets a little repetitive, but I think I have made comments that I'm like, that's weird. We had a blizzard and nothing reset, and I'd go to the next region and it was reset. So I think I may have noticed it, but not pieced it together.
Yeah, it would like reset for the next region, but not the one that you were currently in.
Not the
because
one I
it
was in.
triggered-
Yeah, I would
triggered
notice
the
it
bug event.
in Crumbling Highway. I think would notice it because you'd have a blizzard. You'd hang out at that little cabin, or not the cabin, but the little cave down by the water, and I would hunker back in there while it was going on, and then as soon as it was over, I'd go run outside thinking, hey, maybe I'll get lucky and find fish, and notice nothing's changed. So I think I've noticed it, but didn't piece it together that something was wrong.
Yeah, I keep thinking I'm going to try that challenge at some point, but the more I've thought about it, it just doesn't fit the way I play the game. Like, I have close to 1,500 hours in this game, and I have 2 runs that went over 100 days, and 0 runs that got to 200 days. Like, I just don't play those those sort of long-term runs, I tend to lose interest.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now with my stalker run. It's more or less just to try to force myself to do the 500-day thing, just to do it, just to kind of push myself and keep myself into it. But it might be interesting on your aspect. I know that doing it with the current game, but maybe if you tried it under its original, the older version with the 1.84, which might also be interesting to do with the same thinking that you were talking about with the interloper. Maybe turn back the clock and do a little time travel.
Yeah,
And
that
I can
could be
help you with that
interesting.
if you need help, by the way.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Go back to like one of the much earlier versions and see, is it possible to live, 200 days forever theoretically? Like, at what point did it become possible to live
Because
forever? Would be
from what I remember reading in the Reddit, I mean, like 50 days was the norm for Dead World. And Jitwire and I both have gotten just a hair. Well, she was at like 191-ish, and I'm at 160, 170, somewhere in there.
Oh, that's actually a great idea. Yeah, I should go do that because there'd be so many fewer maps. You'd actually be under pressure. You'd
It'd
only
be a
get
whole
a
different
certain amount of
experience. That's
food.
why I wanted to go do that, because it's a whole different, again, it's a whole different thing. And you'd be on the old loot tables too.
I just don't know if I can ever play with the old cooking system. I've seen videos of the old cooking system, and I like the new one so much more. I don't know if I would be able to put up with that.
But if it helps you at all, I already have a working copy. I can set it up so that you can just download it and then you can try it. And then if you want to go further back, I can help you with that. But nevertheless, I think that might be interesting, because I know we've talked about this before when you were on before about the Dead World thing and how it was uninteresting to you in certain aspects. But maybe doing it on the older version with fewer maps, no cooking, all the older loot tables, everything else, might spark your interest a little, because it does make you a scavenger more than a hunter.
Yeah. Just to answer this question, the old cooking system was essentially there was no simultaneous cooking, so you couldn't do anything else while the cooking was happening. So it was like you were forced to pass time as you cooked a thing every time, and there were no slots, right? So you just go to the fire and you'd say, I want to make water, and you'd be forced to stay there while the water boiled. And it would still, do it fast, but you wouldn't be able to do other things. You wouldn't be able to cook two things at once. So it was just a very forced, inflexible system.
Very clunky.
Yeah.
Compared to what we have now. I don't think that's the cooking system in the version I've got, because like I said, I have the version that's right I think, it was right after episode 3 came out. So if that helps any. It was in December, right after episode 3 came out. This the age. It's like 1.8 something. I can't remember. 1.84.
Yeah, that's right, Stars. It was exactly like crafting. You could just do one thing.
Like sewing a shirt.
Else.
One piece at a time. Now, see, I'm just a little ahead of you. You were saying 1,500. I've got 1,800 hours, so. But I spent a lot of time goofing off and not doing. I was so bad, like you. I really can't wrap my head around the long game and playing for hundreds and hundreds of days. That's why I'm kind of forcing myself. But and Dead World was never supposed to last as long as it did either. Every time I was playing, it was like, I'm going to die tomorrow. I'm going to die tomorrow. You still with me, or did I lose you? Okay,
no,
never mind.
I don't know what your plans are here, but I'm gonna have to call it a day soon.
No problem. We're actually running overtime because of our little hiccup, so we can end this whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Figure I would look through here and see if there's any final questions to answer before I.
Last minute questions. And yes, Faye, I do need a bank loan. I over talked about that one, but I kind of knew I was. It kind of falls into that whole thing.
A bank loan? I feel like I missed something.
Well, every time that Jitwire and I do the podcast, we tend to bring up Dead World. So Dead World became like a swear jar thing. And so I owe money to the swear jar because I've been using the word Dead World like 20,000 times in this podcast.
Ah, that explains a lot, because I saw that comment from way earlier, and I thought, I didn't hear him say anything inappropriate.
And you haven't heard what I've been doing too, because I have like a sound effect of me putting money in a jar, and so you'd have to listen to the the rebroadcast to hear it, because you're not hearing it on here.
Nice.
So last questions for Ark. We've kept him way longer than we probably should have, but we did have some technical difficulties, and it's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah, Stars said started playing just before they changed the cooking system to have the slots. Yeah, I think I started playing. It was right around. I remember seeing the new Thompson's Crossing. Right, it was just Rural Crossroads before, so I started playing just before that change, which I think is when they added the plane crash too. So
yeah, it was right
probably
around
when
episode 3
came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember. I think the big change that I really liked was right around when I started playing. They added the charcoal mapping, which I think gave me a completely different experience of how the whole game worked compared to the people who had played before me at that point. Because like if you watch some of the old school, like some of the big Let's Players, like Hadrian in particular, the way he navigates the map is completely different from how I do it. Like he knows everything by feel. He doesn't map or worry about what the map looks like or anything like that. And so it's really interesting watching him do stuff like Summit Timberwolf Mountain, because he doesn't even know what the map looks like as far as I can tell. Whereas I learned the maps by mapping them, so I know what the layout looks like, and it's just a completely different experience. I really like the mapping system.
Yeah, it's not like a Fog of War or anything like that. It's you literally have to do it, and that is cool that you have to actually draw it out.
Yeah, and it's nice for those single region challenges. Like I'll map the whole region for that. I don't really do it so much in the main runs just because there's other stuff to be doing, and once you know the map, you don't really need to draw it again. But it's really great for that first time when you learn a region.
And Stars is agreeing with you. I really like the mapping. Haven't used it much since, but I've mapped every. I have every map completely memorized now, but I've used it much earlier on. And I think a lot of us did. I don't do it much either, but again, something I'm going to do in my stalker run is I'm going to go do Polaroids and maps and do that. That's just to give me something to do.
Yeah, I know there are
some people busy.
There are some people who are like map purists who they do the mapping, but they don't ever look at the online maps. And I couldn't do that just because I'm all into the shortcuts and finding what's the absolute shortest way to get from here to here, and finding things. I learned so much in the Frankie series about just the layout of Mystery Lake, and there's lots of places that you'd think they're far apart, but they're just a short walk if you just go in a straight line from one to the other. A lot of that back area connects to the railroad pretty much just in a straight line if you know where you're going. But yeah, so my general philosophy is I'll learn a region using the charcoal maps, and then when I think I've mostly got it, then I'll go look at the online maps to just see what I missed and just learn all the details.
You were making the map more efficient by not having to walk around things that you could walk almost through or over.
Yeah, essentially, there's I think the big one that was a surprise to me is that camp office is really close to those logging trailers. Not really close, but it's a lot closer than you would think, because you just go out to the train tracks, walk down a little bit, and then you can just go right over a hill, and they're right there.
Yeah.
And it's just like, without looking at the map, you wouldn't necessarily realize that you can do that.
You can cut a lot of time and chunks off of something sometimes, especially, and again, that goes with like what you're talking about with the Frankie deal, because you had the fire count in the clock, and then it also helps if you're freezing to death to get from point A to point B as quick as possible.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
So does anybody else got any more questions before I let Archimedes out of his obligation that he agreed to do, but he was so gracious with his time today?
Oh no, this was really fun. I enjoyed this. Thanks for
I love
all
and we love having you on, and we'll definitely bring you on again. These are fun conversations. I love this stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for all the questions and comments, everyone, throughout the stream. It's been really interesting.
Sorry about the hiccup earlier, but hopefully what I'll do is I'll try to piece this together where it's all just one big long broadcast, and we'll just upload it as a VOD and stuff. And thanks to everybody for coming in and everything. Hey, one real quick thing, I was going to mention this earlier, and that is there will be no broadcast next weekend. We've got the 3-day weekend here in the United States, and unfortunately I'm getting called into work for that weekend as well, so I'm not going to be available, and Jitwire's still doing her flooring and all that stuff. So thank you very much all for putting up with that as well. I know, how dare I?
All right, well, thanks
Art,
everyone.
thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Kirk. I enjoyed
Appreciate it.
All right, see you next time.
All right, guys, thank you very much, and Jitwire's going to run us out.
Thank you all so very much for joining us, whether it was live or you're watching the recording. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.